Hello, my name is Rai, and welcome back to the channel. And welcome back to part 2 in our series of going over Battle Cores TCG Set 2's monster cards. And there's not much else to say. You already know what's going on. If you're new here, then check out the description. There's a bunch of useful links down there, including a playlist to all of these videos so you can get caught up if you so please. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the very first card, being Mint Crystal Slime. Mint Crystal Slime is a price 4, 2 power, 2 armor, earth slime type monster with the effect Duplicate. So Duplicate means that you make a token copy of the card. So in this case, on its own, it seems just like a price for 2/2, which isn't very good. Sure, you can run it in something like Mountain of the Giants to give it a stat and ability buff, giving it +1/+2 and active, but still, that's really underwhelming for a price 4 card. But once you realize Duplicate just basically means that you're getting 2 2/2s, 2 power, 2 armor bodies on the board, it becomes significantly more worth it. And so that's kind of the main gimmick of these slime monsters, that all the slimes have Duplicate. This is just the first slime made. It's very simple, very basic, very straightforward and to the point. It's just 2/2 with Duplicate. Almost all of them are also earth type, which, like I said, or like I already said, works well with Mountain of the Giants. So if you are going to run the slimes, I would advise running them in a Mountain of the Giants deck. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about it. It's very simple. You just basically get 2 of these guys. Very simple. But yeah, so that's Mint Crystal Slime. The next card we're going over is another slime, being Sapphire Slime. Sapphire Slime is a price 1, 0/1 earth slime type monster with the effect Duplicate, so the exact same effect. This is just a price 1 version. It's very simple. Price 1, you get 2 0/1s on the board for free. Well, not for free, for 1 point. So 2 bodies on the board, which is really nice. And it's an earth slime type. There's not really slime support per se, but earth type support is out there and available. And this is a really good early game and just cheap card and, in general, option for Mountain of the Giant decks. Because it's so cheap, it's actually one of the few what I'd consider really good low-priced earth monsters. Most of the really good earth monsters are kind of expensive, and so you can't really afford to spam them in your deck, or else you're just going to draw into a lot of brick hands and not really be able to do anything. But what Sapphire Slime allows you to do is just it gives you a card to early game just throw something down to stall. I mean, it's putting 2 bodies on the board. Or if you have a Mountain of the Giants in play, it suddenly becomes a 1/3 with active, and you get 2 of these 1/3 with actives for 1 point, and so that's really good value. And they further clog up the board and make it harder for the opponent to break through until you can get to those later turns to when you can really start playing your bigger, better, stronger earth monsters. But yeah, so that's Sapphire Slime, and it plays a really important role in Mountain of the Giant decks for a phenomenal, cheap, and early game card. But yeah, so that's about all I have to say for Sapphire Slime. The next card that we're going over is Dark Skull. Dark Skull is a price 3, 1/1 dark undead type monster with the effect Dark Monster's price is reduced by 2, and Ender, so when this card is discarded, search 2 dark monsters from the deck or ground zone. So this was pretty much just made to be generic dark type support. There's not a whole lot of dark or light type support. Even to this day, there's not a ton, really. But this card was kind of made to somewhat remedy that. It doesn't completely solve the issue, and it doesn't entirely on its own make an entire dark type strategy, but with some more support that's released later down the line, it definitely gets better. But this is not a bad card, and that price reduction is honestly insane. And really the effect is the whole reason why you're running it. I mean, a 1/1 for 3 points is pretty awful value-wise, and Undead is not really a supported type. Dark, as I just got through saying, is fairly unsupported, so you really are just running this because that effect is phenomenal. Dark monsters' price is reduced by 2. I would probably word that a little bit differently nowadays, but it doesn't make it any harder to understand. It just reduces their price by 2, and that's huge. And if you've seen some of the other videos, you've heard me discuss just how massive price reduction based effects are in this game, because the value of a single point is so great that even just reducing the price of something by 1 is hugely influential. And so being able to reduce it by 2 per copy, which means you could have up to 4 copies of this, which would mean a price reduction of 8, and prices can go below price 0. You won't see it printed on a card ever, but it certainly can. And what happens when you subtract by a negative? Because that's what you're doing. You're subtracting the price of the card by the amount of points that you have. So if their price is negative, and you subtract by a negative, you basically get to add that amount. So let's say something is price -2. That means that you would gain 2 points for playing the card. And so through price reduction, especially with these lower priced cards, you can start gaining points for playing cards, which is massive. And that's one of the biggest reasons why price reduction is so powerful. So that's huge. And the Ender effect, to allow you to just search 2 dark monsters of any kind from deck or ground zone, that's just a good search. And it's mainly there just to help make it a little bit less painful when the opponent takes out your 1 armor Dark Skull, because it's not likely to stay on the board for super long. So playing it at the right time is key. But yeah, it's quite powerful, the effect. All it really needs is better abusers of the kind of effect that it has. And like I said, better stuff does come, but as of right now, there's not a whole lot to abuse with this, really. But yeah, so that's Dark Skull. The next card is Frizz. Frizz is a price 1, 0/1 water elemental type monster with the effect that allows you to pay 1 point to give it +1 power and +1 armor. So this is an interesting card. I don't feel like I see it played super often. I feel like it could definitely see more play. It's a bit of an investment to get a whole lot of value out of it. So competitively it may not see a whole ton of play, but casually I'd say it's a really, really solid card, and it can be very hard to deal with, especially if the opponents don't immediately do something about it. Because before long this card is going to start growing massively. Because you pay 1 point to play it, and it's just a measly little 0/1. Water elemental's barely supported, like almost at all, so it's basically not supported really. Water is decently supported with stuff like Life Rain. It would function well in a Life Rain deck because it's a cheap water monster. And then your ability to pay points to grow it means that you could, if you get this later in the game, you could throw this down and then drop an additional 3 or 4 points on it and supercharge its stats. And since this stays, this isn't just you gain this for the turn. This is permanently, stat changes as long as it stays on the board. Then it's able to just grow and grow and grow and almost snowball out of control once you get far enough in the game. The biggest downside is, for 1, it takes time and resources you need to actually grow it, and for 2, it does not have True Strike. So all it takes is, you'll attack into a single monster, and that's the best you'll get until you're able to finally attack directly with it. Whereas with True Strike, you'd be able to attack the monster, and if your stats are high enough by that point, deal some damage to the opponent directly. So those are the 2 main issues. But other than that, it's a really interesting and fun card, and I've had a lot of fun playing with it myself. The next card is Smooth Potato. Smooth Potato is a part of the Potato archetype, which is a group of nature plant type monsters specifically. And it doesn't really fall in line with the rest of the archetype, to be honest. But it works well in the same kind of decks that you would run potatoes in at this point. It's fairly cheap, it's just price 2. It's just a 1/1, which isn't super impressive, but it's a price 2 with active, which is really, really good. Active just means that this card can immediately attack the turn that's summoned. Typically, whenever you play a monster card or a legend card, you'd have to wait until your next turn to be able to actually attack with them. Active says, no, I can attack immediately, and so it makes the card significantly more threatening and far more easily useful. And the beautiful thing about it is that you're probably going to be running it in a Tree of Vitality deck, and so sure, its stats are not super impressive, but it doesn't really matter. Because if you have 2 or 3 Tree of Vitalities in play, it's gaining +1/+1 and survival for each of those. The +1/+1 is making it both more offensively and defensively threatening, and survival's making it significantly harder to take down. And so this can become a very potent threat, and it's one of the only nature monsters that you have access to that has active, that has this ability to immediately attack. And so that on its own makes this a pretty valuable option and something worth considering in a Tree Vitality deck, since they're kind of known for being a little bit on the slower side. And the last card that we're going over for this video is Shadow Creeper. Shadow Creeper is a price 4, 3/1 Dark Undead type monster with the effect Elusive and Upkeep, do 1 burn. So price 4, 3/1 sounds awful. That sounds like some horrible stats for a price 4 card. And Dark Undead, for the same exact reasons as Dark Skull, is not a phenomenal typing. It doesn't really have a whole lot to work with. It doesn't have a whole lot of support. And so it's definitely a bit of a downside. But it's all made up for by the effect. We'll go over the second part first because it's easier and quicker. Upkeep, do 1 burn. So Upkeep just means that it's basically like Startup, so this activates the turn that it's summoned. But the difference between Startup and Upkeep is that Upkeep will also activate at the start of every consecutive turn that this card is in play. So you play this card and you get to deal 1 burn damage to the opponent, so one damage to the opponent out of their 30 health. And that may not sound like a lot, but then at the start of the next turn it's dealing another one. And at the start of the next turn is dealing another one. And the start of the next turn is dealing another. It's just piling on damage. And it's not a lot of damage, and it's pretty slow, but it's still free damage that the opponent really can't do anything about. Well, something they could do about it is attack it and take it out. I mean, it only has 1 armor, but that's where Elusive comes in. What Elusive says, like how it works, is that cards with Elusive can only be attacked by other cards with Elusive or cards that specifically say that they can hit Elusives. That is a very, very small collection of cards. Very few cards have Elusive or the effect that says that they can hit Elusives, even if they are themselves are not. It's a very, very rare effect to have. It's one of the rarest keywords that I use when making cards. And so it may only have 1 armor, but you can't just attack into it with just anything. You need something very specific, and most decks don't just run Elusive monsters. Very few strategies really do. The main one I can think of is something like Star of Ruin using Ghost Flame. And so it's going to be able to just sit there and just sit on the board with the opponent not really being able to target it very easily. And so that upkeep effect is going to be able to just keep on happening. And remember, it has 3 power. That's quite a bit, or that's quite a bit of damage. And so it's going to be able to sit there and not only deal burn damage, but then attack every turn after it's summoned. And so it can just sit there and rack up damage that the opponent is going to really struggle to answer. The biggest downside with the card is that it's just slow. It is inherently slow. It's price 4. So you have to wait until turn 4 or best case scenario turn 3 with something like a 1-up or a Mumbletez in play. Something that can get you a point. But that's still pretty expensive, and it still can take a little bit. And sure, it's impactful, but it's not like it's going to immediately win you the game. So this has the potential to be a very threatening card, or at least just a really annoying card to deal with, but it's not anything game breaking. I quite like the card because I like to use cards that are annoying to deal with against my friends, but it's not exactly, like I said, anything crazy. But it isn't bad. It definitely is worth considering if you have the kind of deck that can fit something like this in it. I wouldn't just throw it into anything. But yeah, so that's Shadow Creeper, and that's the video. So I'd like to thank you all for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all that YouTube stuff. You already know. You already know what to do. Like I said at the beginning of the video, be sure to check out the description. There's a lot of important links down there. One of them being the very Instagram that we're looking at all this stuff on. So if you want to keep up to date with the most current cards and with what's most recently been put out, some of these new cards through here, then be sure to check this out. I post quite regularly. I put on the story good information to be aware of. And yeah, so be sure to check that out. If you made it all the way to this video, or all the way to the end, I have 2 things to tell you. For one, great news. As of the recording of this video, I have just yesterday, I believe, published Mini Set 3. And I made a post about it on here. I made a community post about it on YouTube. So be sure to check that out at thegamecrafter.com if you would like to buy some packs, and that there will be a link to thegamecrafter.com in the description. And yeah, so be sure to check that out. And also, if you made it to the very end of the video, then type in the comments, "Welcome back." It has been quite a while since I've made a video, so I would really appreciate it. Anyway, again, thank you all for watching. I hope that you all have a blessed day, and fare thee well.